Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and real quick before the Prophet and the Warlock, I don't know why I'm wearing my headphones, I don't need these, but before the Prophet and the Warlock DLC comes out, I thought I would make two quick videos just going over the new information for campaign and multiplayer. Well, I'll keep an eye on the time. If we keep it below 30 minutes, I'll probably just knock them both out at the same time. But I hadn't had a chance to really sit down and look at these, so I thought we'd go over them together so I could comment on any that maybe are missing or any that I've missed that look really exciting. So let's go ahead. So yep, they added new regions and provincial changes. You can see that in my new regions and provinces in Mortal Empires video. They of course did add a bunch of new regions actually to the Vortex campaign as well, which I didn't make a video about that, but you're all going to be playing it in from the time I'm recording this, 3 hours, so I don't think that's really necessary. But they did add Mordheim, of course the ruins of Mordheim. They added 3 other additional new Empire settlements. They added Massive Oracle in Bretonia. They also added things like, oh, what else did they add? Of course, they added Tlaqua and Coaxitl, I think is what it's called, which is Tic-Tac-Toe's starting region in province in the Southlands, which a lot of people have kind of shit on that for being called the Western Jungle, and then it's not a jungle, it's a desert. So hopefully that's something they can fix in the next patch, where they just sprinkle it in jungle terrain and just change it to being jungle terrain to make it look better. But yeah, it's whatever. Not too worried about that. And let's go ahead and dive into it. So all the Vampire Count factions now have Bloodline Lords. That's awesome. And some of them have focuses. Musion focuses on Blood Dragons, Necrarchs focus on Necrarchs, Strigoi focus on Strigoi, and the Silver Host focus on Lamians. Kick ass. I feel like it should say that if the it should say the Von Karstein and the Vampire Counts, or at least the Von Karstein should focus on Von Karsteins, but that's super cool. I didn't know that. That's great. I really like when the AI is designed to have a theme, because I think that tends to make it more exciting. Like when they do the Greenskin update, I legitimately hope that we get actual Greenskin tribes where the AI is not only led by a certain kind of Greenskin, but that actually influences how they do things. Like if there was Forest Goblin tribes or Orc tribes or Savage Orc tribes or regular Goblin tribes or Night Goblins, yada yada. Added 15 new island map variations. That's great. More maps is always better. It increases the variety, especially when you're playing, if you want to take to the seas and have a big campaign there. Added new ritual locations to Eye of the Vortex campaign. That's great, especially because it's getting a little crowded in some places, southern Lustria in particular. Added new map location buttons on the Lord selection screen so you can see when characters start. That is a huge quality of life change. It doesn't really affect anything, but it's so nice that you can just click on a button and it shows it in the character select screen for a new campaign, instead of you having to manually enter every frickin' campaign to figure out where you start. Lowered the availability of most agents for all factions to tier 3 or below. That's awesome, because that means that you can actually recruit characters or heroes from all settlements instead of having to do it in your capital. So that's great. Added Feral Cold Ones as a recruitable unit for the Lizardmen from the Dinosaur Reserve building. The Animal Resource Chain. Oh, that's super cool. I didn't know this, and I'm literally playing a campaign right now. So I did not know that. I think that's the tier 3 pasture building, I think. So I'll have to check that when I get back into my 10 and 1 campaign. Let's see. Overall changes. Removed auto-resolve bonuses for playable and horde factions controlled by the AI. That's awesome, because I think right now, or I think the way it was, and this is what made Beastmen and Greenskin so bad, was that the Waz and the bestial herds had a debuff for being a horde thing, instead of it being a playable faction. I assume that's what they mean by that. Or maybe they just mean the actual playable and horde factions. But the way they say and horde, so I can't tell if that means armies like the Wa are no longer being debuffed, or if they mean that just the playable factions and hordes, so Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, lizardmen, like the actual playable guys, are no longer going to be curb stomping the minor factions. Either way, those are great changes, because if it means the second one, like they're no longer curb stomping factions, I think that's great, because that means that you're actually gonna have a chance to see completely different factions in the end game, which is awesome, and they will be more threatening. And but if they mean it the first way, that's also awesome, because it means those greenskin and beastmen would be better. So I don't know which way they mean that, but either way, it's good. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, cool. Restricted budget allocation across the board. Okay, that's good. So these are mostly just AI updates to make the AI a little smarter. Oh, AI no longer gets base level public order buffs and will instead have to handle it. See, that's really cool if they actually are making that work, because if the AI doesn't have like a bunch of public order buffs, that means you can actually do stuff to mess with their public order and cause them problems. Because one of the things that I hate if you're playing on like very hard or even hard difficulty sometimes is that a lot of the AIs will have like plus 20 public order in all of their settlements, and you just can't do anything. Like, even if you're playing like Warriors of Chaos and you're like, all right, I've got Chaos Corruption and I'm sending in like 3 Exalted Heroes, all with maxed out public order penalty to try and like make their lives miserable, and they're like, oh, we're at -2. It sucks. So I really hope that's what that means, because that would actually make there be some interplay in that you could actually send in agents to cause chaos, because even if a rebellion loses horribly, if you move in your 20 stack to attack a capital the turn after a rebel army has attacked it, that's a bunch of free damage you didn't have to do. So I think it's great. Let's see. Reworked option selection for Vampire Coast, so now they are more likely to sack, raise, and establish pirate coves and occupy less often. That's great. I still wish there was a way to interact with Vampire Coast, or Vampire Coves, like we can with the Under Empire, but that'll be a good discussion for another time. AI will no longer build multiple surplus buildings. Okay, that's good. So yeah, most of these are just making sure that the AI is better, which that's not a bad thing at all. Cool. And the Vampire Coast impact and average strength rank greatly reduced. That's really, really great. And multiple vampire factions performance visibly reduced. That's awesome, because I think a big complaint that a lot of people had in the modern build is, or the live build before this upcoming one goes live, is that vampires would just dominate the map. Like, Border Princes would get wiped out instantly, Tilia would get wiped out instantly, Astalia would get wiped out instantly by all the different pirates, and the vampire counts would dominate the entire empire. And I'll tell you guys, I mean, I've been playing a ton of campaign, getting used to the new campaign, and I mean, you can see it in all the videos I'm putting out in the live stream I did yesterday. A lot of those old world factions, like the Border Princes and stuff, aren't being conquered anymore in like 10 turns. Like, I think I played 10-1 for 6 hours last night, and I never got a message that I think the Border Princes and Tilia and Astalia are all still alive in my campaign. I'd have to check, but they seem much more survivable, so that's really good. New AI factions, Clan Fester, Clan Mange, and the Leafcutters tribe. All of these are in both the Mortal Empires and the Vortex, I believe. I know for a fact... No, wait, no. These, I think, are just Vortex. I know the Leafcutters tribe is not in Mortal Empires. I think Clan Mange is. I don't think Clan Fester is. But one that they didn't include here for Mortal Empires that I know for a fact, because everyone keeps talking about it, is that the spine of Sotek dwarves, which are the dwarves from Lustria that inhabit that southern mountain range, they are now in Mortal Empires, which apparently they weren't, which I didn't know that off the top of my head. Skaven Under Empire, you can check that out on my Ikit Claw thing. Building changes. Warfire Throwers. Warfire Thrower team secondary building unlock requirement to use engineering level 1 rather than level 2. Croxagores are now a level 4 unit. Fireleech Bolas are a level 4 unit. No longer require secondary building for Pterodons. Bastiladon and Solar Engine are both tier 4 units instead of tier 3. I think that's a good change. They're very powerful. but they only require a level 1 beast building chain instead of a level 4, I think. So I think that's a good trade. Added feral cold ones is a recruitable unit from the dinosaur. We already talked about that. And then province. Oh, cool. So these are all the new provinces and regions. So you got the Tip of Lustria, Kayaks, Night Forest, Hissing God, Fuming Serpent. That's a great one. Sotek's Trail, new region to Southern Red Rivers. Suntree Glades to the Northern Red Rivers, which is a new province. Okay. And then all of these are obviously new to that new province. So that's great. I love just seeing more territory and land being used more efficiently. So, oh, and we actually got way more than I thought. So Tlaqua, and so these are the ones I talked about with Tic-Tac-Toe. And then these are all the ones in the Empire. And then this is the Orc one. And then the one that looks like they slipped past me are the Wellsprings of Eternity, which is a new region to the Jungles of the Green Mist, existing province. And then they added a mountain pass to the western range of the Spine of Sotek, which connects different parts of Lustria to each other. So that's great. Azheg's Skullmuncher mount was fixed, which is good because we fixed that a while ago, and the fix did not stick, which was kind of annoying because it used to be that like Azheg's mount was very expensive Skullmuncher, and then they took it down, and then the update came through to like standardized mounts, and they moved it back up, and now they've moved it back down again, so that's good. So now rank 14 for Skullmuncher, which is fair because that's Azheg's only mount. And also, he should have the earliest access to a Wyvern, because that makes him unique and fun. Skink Chief and Skink Priest Stegodons and Ancient Stegodons are separate skills. Great. Oh, right, that's good, because it used to be that you'd have to get the basic Stegodon and then level it up to the Ancient Stegodon. Same thing for Krokar. Cool. Runesmith and Rune Lord Oathgold skill has been changed from 1, 2, 3 to 3 and 6. That's great, so it requires less skill points to get more gold. Let's see, random changes here. Strategic icon now matches the style of the landmark building group icon, which is an obelisk. Reiksguard no longer require a smith. The Red Duke has the Blood Dragon version of a Barded Nightmare instead of the regular one. Cool, nice little change. I still wish he would get his unique horse, but maybe that would be good to worry about when he's playable. Low loyalty advice shouldn't occur on legendary lords. Cooldown display to all agents that have a cooldown. That's cool. Gunnery White now has his bomb throwing. Fixed followers that weren't dropping. Fixed all text references to the Skaven Underworld to Skaven Under Empire. That's a nice little thing. Blessed Spawnings. When you begin a new Lizardman campaign, there are now 4 different mission types. Battle Captives, kill entities, raise sack, and defeat X armies. Each of these has a common and rare variant. Variants have the same conditions for completion, but the common variant rewards common units and the rare unlocks rare units. These missions should not be active at the same time. Each mission has 3 campaign stage variants for early, mid, and late game. I have seen this. So you get like more units for how late in the game it is. So for instance, it'll be a more difficult mission, but I have actually seen this in effect, and I'm glad they standardized this. There used to be so many different types of Blessed Spawnings, which was kind of cool, but some of them were stupid hard. Like some of them would be like, in 5 turns increase your gold gain to like plus 800 a turn from what you're making now. Or in 3 turns get a trade agreement with this faction that fucking hates you. So all that stuff, I'm glad they fixed that. Albric has his Trident. Awesome. You can see my campaign where I focus on that. The Barded Warhorse option for damsels is no longer a thing to match with their mount option on the campaign. That's great. Makes things consistent. Okay, that's cool. Right, and then the Plutonium Rework. If you want to check out all the Plutonium Reworks, you can check out my video on that. I'm not going to focus too much on that. They basically here just go over all the nitty-gritty changes. Basically, the tech tree was completely reorganized, and they most of the researches were also made faster to do, but they just reorganized it so it's much more efficient. And then peasant mobs are now 100% have 0 upkeep so long as you're not over your peasant economy cap, which is great. So you're not punished as heavily for going over the max number for peasants, But when you're not over it, they're like being able to just spam free units that are just crap tier infantry is so good for early game. Diplomacy changes. So basically, this for Bretonia just makes it so that you're no longer at war with any of the... basically makes it so you're no longer at war with any of the High Elves if you're playing as the Bretonians, and most of the Bretonians hate the Vampire Pirates. So you're kind of like encouraged to go to war at sea, which I really, really like. And then they fixed the penalty of Lizardman versus Lizardman aversion for AIs that are internally hostile from minus... So for this, they're basically saying they made Lizardmen less hostile to each other and more friendly each other, which is good because Lizardman diplomacy is horrifying. It is so bitch to deal with. Green Knight changes. So Green Knight can now have unlimited charges. That's awesome once you get him all the way up. Plus, once he is available, he lasts 25 turns now instead of 15. And although he is an agent on the campaign, the only thing he can do now is search ruins and embed into army. So he can't assault units, he can't assassinate people, he can't assault garrisons. The only thing he can do is join your army or search ruins, which is fair. And then they grant him immunity to assassination as a trade. I do hope to make something I saw somebody suggest that was a really cool idea, is instead of having the Green Knight as an actual hero that you have to summon and like deal with all that crap, one thing that it might be better that they could look at for a future patch is instead of it doing it instead that using or summoning the Green Knight gives you the ability to summon him like as an army ability, and he just like pops out of like a cool effect, like he's like bursting out of a forest or something, and he just like shows up on the battlefield and helps kick ass. Because that way you could have a 20 stack that doesn't involve him. You wouldn't have to like move him around the campaign map trying to get him places, and especially since he can't take actions anymore, that seems like it'd be better. See, all Bretonian lords, paladins, and even the damned paladins start on Barded Warhorse by default, so they match tabletop. It's great. And then they made the garrisons better. Awesome. They made the greenskins there. Awesome. Increased the amount of income from Bretonian buildings. Awesome. Decreased the cost of those buildings. Great. Added greater differentiation between farm and industry economies. Great. Yada, yada, yada. And then removed Kimmler starting corruption in Bretonia when he is AI controlled. That's nice. So it makes it so that Kimmler can't just kind of completely overwhelm Bretonia right at the start. And it looks like, and they said they also adjusted his personality to be more defensive. Once again, this is kind of buying into the make the vampire counts less overwhelming, which is definitely a massive feature. And I think most of the complaints I've seen about the thing before that. Also, I just realized I have this up the entire time. So in my defense, I was bored and I was like, I wonder if there's any like cheesy romantic animes that I could watch that would be like fun and like fantasy themed. And so I just literally was like bored and ended up on this. Haven't committed to anything yet, but I'll let you guys know if I find anything good. Moving on. I just don't want to X out of it because I haven't had a chance to pick one yet, because it's like I want a show to watch. Audio. Don't really care about this. They just fix stuff, so that's good. Rattling gunners will sometimes be overcome with verminous glee when firing. I guess that means they're gonna like laugh and stuff. Added new melee impact sounds for two-handed. Oh, that's really cool. The council guard don't talk. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I'm glad they did that. Disabled some non-Slanesh god lines for Sigvald. That's good. Why did they even have him record those in the first place? New active cast sound for the Screaming Bell, Ark of Sotek, and Engine of the Gods. Very, very cool. Yeah, like the bell actually tolls now. When casting the Screaming Bell now makes bigger bongs. Oh man, I love these. I love all of these. So great. I'm glad they're making time to take care of these. Let's see. Fix some stance selection voiceovers for Skaven Lords. Cool. Turn down campaign building fires. That's probably nice. Rework some idle vocalizations for Skulk and Tretch. Okay, so they probably say less stupid stuff. Added new idle loops for Skaven Lords. So cool. Okay, so just make them look a little different when they're just sitting there. And we're doing good on time, so let's pop into the balancing changes, because as long as I keep this under vaguely 30 minutes-ish, I'd be happy. Alright, so rebalanced all Vortex Breath, Wind, and Explosion abilities as a bug that was making them use reduced radius for area of effect was fixed. So that's really awesome. And I'm not going to go too in depth here on the changes to magic because I could explain it, but basically, long story short is that Vortex Breath, Wind, and Explosion abilities now accurately match their templates, which is really, really fucking nice. So you can predict where they're going to go, and it looks really cool. And then the summons are no longer unbreakable. They don't, so their unbinding like barely does any damage. Like it'll maybe do like 100 or 200 damage to like a multi-thousand health unit over the whole course of their spell. But they can crumble or break and run away. And in the last 3 seconds of their summon, they will go from whatever health they're at to completely dead. Which A, means that they're predictable to use and counter, which is so much more interesting and engaging. And B, because they're no longer unbreakable, your opponent can't just like spam summon, like Raise Dead for instance, in the middle of your army with no repercussions. Like if you use Raise Dead in the middle of an enemy army or Vermintide, like those are the biggest offenders in my opinion, then those units will immediately start crumbling because the leadership is like, oh crap, this is bad, and they will just fall apart and die. So I'm really, really glad to see that fix. For units, the Hydra and the Charybdis both got plus 10 armor. That's awesome. I still think they probably are going to need more because they're supposed to have a 4-up Scaly Skin save in tabletop, which is only 1 less than a dragon. And yet I feel like dragons are like somewhere in like the 90 plus ballpark, and the Hydras and the Charybdis now I think are at 60 or 70. So they probably still need to go up a little bit, but you know, we're getting there. Hopefully that'll make them more survivable, because I think for a lot of people, they just tend to die too fast. Because like the Hydra and the Chilisantar can have all the cool regen in the world, but they get bursted down too fast. And then just a couple of little changes. You see Cold One Knights and Dread Knights all got little buff changes. And the main reason for that is because of the change to Primal Instincts. Which Primal Instincts affects all Cold One units, the Dark Elf and Lizardman ones, and it also affects the Kroxigors. And what it used to do was that when you got down to like, I don't know, 30 or 40 or whatever % health, they would rampage and you lose control of the unit, period, end of story. Now what it is instead is when they get down to the last 20%, I think, of their health, they do still rampage, but they also get a melee attack and charge bonus buff, which is a awesome exchange. Because quite frankly, if your unit's down to the last 20% of their health, they're probably going to break or not be that useful anyway. And at this point, they literally just start attacking the nearest thing and they get a stat buff out of it to like counteract the fact that they're probably tired by that point. So I'm actually super okay with that. And as you're playing Lizardmen, you can still counter it by using Cold-Blooded or the Focus Instincts, which is the AoE version that Tenin Juan and the Red-Crested Skink Chief have. So, super, super awesome. All assassins, the Canine Assassin and the Scaved Assassin, now have Vanguard deployment, which is awesome, just makes them more assassin-y. And the Canine Assassin actually poisons people with his projectiles. That's great. He finally figured out. He was like, what if instead of just poisoning my dagger, I also poisoned the Sharpie point on my little hand crossbow too? And everyone was like, fucking genius. So that's cool. The Bolt Fiend unit is cheaper. That's good. They're not that great in multiplayer right now because they're really expensive. Black Orc Corsairs got +1 bonus versus infantry. Minor change to make them better. Loremaster of Hoeth, much cheaper, which is great. A little less good on the charge though, which makes sense. Swordmasters are supposed to be more of like a stationary fight unit, not like a kick your ass on the charge unit. Moon Dragons and Sun Dragons both got +10 armor buff just to make them more viable. That's great. Noble on a Chariot got a significant debuff with the -10 charge, -2 melee defense. So did the Cold One Chariots, which is good. Those were very, very prone to heavy abuse in multiplayer, especially by people who just cycle charge constantly and like are dicks as far as I'm concerned. So I'm glad to see that there's some punishment for that playstyle and they actually need to work harder. Lithnar, massive buffs to his bow. Hopefully it's good enough to make him viable. I don't know, but he's still fun to play. So any buff on his bow is more than welcome. Especially because he's kind of an experimental character. Just because he's like, I think he's the only significantly range focused character in the game. And I think there will be more. You know, I mean, Orion is able to be range focused, but Orion is also like a really good melee combatant. A Lithanar, if you're using him properly, should always be at range. And I think there's going to be other characters like that potentially in the future. So, you know, it's good to figure out what they need to do to get it right. Frostheart Phoenix got big buffs, which, God help me. I hate the Frostheart Phoenix. It's so mean. That massive debuff aura of it just drives me nuts. Aurelian Reaver's a little cheaper, great. Loremaster, so okay, that's repeat. Volkmar the Grim got +5 melee defense on all of his non-chariot options, which is awesome. But on his chariot, he's cheaper, and he got +15 bonus versus infantry. That is sexy. Good for you, Volkmar. Good for you. Now you're no longer a meme, hopefully. We'll have to see. I mean, I thought he was actually pretty good before, but now it looks like he's going to be really good. Hellblaster Volley Gun, increased accuracy. I hope that makes it viable. I really, really like Hellblasters. Witch Hunter, Accusation is now a Hex. No longer deals any damage. Instead, it reduces your armor by 30, melee defense by 26, and missile resistance by 22 for 35 seconds. Thank you. Thank you. The double Witch Hunter Balthazar Gelt build was so fucking stupid. And it never made any sense how a Witch Hunter accusing you and being like, you're a heretic, would like result in you dying. Like, that made absolutely no sense. And it was literally a discount Spirit Leech. So I am really, really glad that they're making it just a debuff instead, because it makes more sense where he would be like, that dude's like prime heretic #1, and everybody in the army would like fucking aim at you and just blow you away, which could be represented, you know, by the fact that your like resistances are down because everyone's like going ham on you. So really, really like that. Steam Tank +2 melee attack. I don't really think the Steam Tank needed melee attack. I think it needs melee defense, but that's just me. Let's see. Wyverns got a fix where they're not spamming their melee attack as much as they should, or where they were spamming it too much, so that's good. Grimgor and Skarsnake both got 400 health. That's awesome. I don't think that's going to make them viable, but cool beans, bro. Doom Divers +15 AP projectile damage, -105 projectile damage. So they're just going to be way more efficient against high tier infantry, or heavy infantry and heavy cav. Great change. Greenskins need answers to things like that. And then the Venom Queen and the Ragnarok Spider got +14 bonus versus large. Finally! Fun fact, when Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition started, one of the very first books we got, I think maybe the first book we got, was Greenskins. And they introduced the Ragnarok Spider, and the Ragnarok Spider was the very, very first monster of this like new colossal base size. Like, we had never seen monsters that big before. And it had a unique ability where when it would attack in combat, one of its attacks would be its stinger, which, you know, on those things is fucking huge. And basically, if it rolled high enough when trying to wound a monster, it would do like a ton of damage with its stinger. So it like had an anti-large attack. So it's nice to see that's finally being represented in the game. And of course, it makes the giant spiders a little bit better at monster fights, which they should be good at. Dwarves, Belegar, Ungrim, and Thorgrim all got 400 health. Hopefully that'll make them viable, like I said earlier. And all of them got interesting buffs. I read it down later on below, but Belegar's Ancestral Grudge, it no longer Wrath of the Ancestors, whatever it's called, it no longer gives him a leadership bonus, but he can use it an infinite number of times. And I think the duration was also reduced. But that's totally fair in my opinion. Being able to pop that, I think it's a really big melee attack and melee defense buff, if I remember, like bunches of times to make Belegar just like constantly kicking ass is great. Thorgrim also got a really big buff to his melee attack, AP damage, basic damage, and he even got more armor. Plus his High King buff, which was terrible, because the way the High King buff used to work, which was that if Thorgrim's leadership was reduced below 50%, he would then give a buff to all allies within range whose health was above 50% or something like that. It was something stupid. But they completely removed the leadership aspect of it now. So now Thorgrim has a buff that I think it's when Thorgrim gets below... I think it was actually reversed. I think I said it wrong. I think it used to be when Thorgrim got below 50% health, anyone whose leadership was above 50% got the buff. That sounds more correct. Now what it does is if Thorgrim and Lewin Layanker has this as well. if Thorgrim or Lewin, their health gets below 50%, their buff, which for Thorgrim is the High King buff, and for Lewin is like the Beloved of Plutonium or something of the King buff, now affects everybody. It just affects them. There's no like other condition, so it's way more likely to go off. Ungrim got +4 melee defense. That's gonna help him. I mean, he's a decent lord, so it's not too bad. Grombernal got cheaper. Great. Rune Lord's more expensive. Great. I think the Rune Lord is way too good, reliably, so that's nice. Hammers, Bikagar, +1 melee defense. Whew, man. Clearly, they're bringing out the big bucks. Gyrocopters with brimstone guns got accuracy increase and quite a large damage increase. That's awesome. It's kind of one of the dwarves' only reliable answers to like hunting down really, really mobile, heavily armored targets. So that's great. Giant Slayers are a little bit cheaper. Awesome. Vampire Coast. Screw these guys. Glad they're getting slapped with nerfs. Count Noctilus, -10 armor, -500 health on foot. Good. Screw him. He deserves that nerf and more. But he was way too durable. Way too durable. So that's a welcome change. Mournguls and Night Haunts. Mournguls and Night Terrors, not Night Haunts. That's AOS. -10 armor, -2 melee attack. Great. Makes them more like, and Mourngul Hunter as well. Makes them more like spooky ghosts and less like physically like nasty, mean things. I don't know. They were significantly well armored, considering you can't see them until they're right on top of you, and they have very high missile resistance. So that seems really fair. Zombie gunnery mobs, all -2 health per entity, -1 melee defense. Good. Screw those units. They had way too much health. That's a really, really fair change. Hand cannons also got a little bit less AP damage, but more base damage. Great. That makes them better at their role and makes it so that they're not like better than like handguns. And then Lamprey's Revenge got +100 multiplayer costs, which is great because that unit was also incredibly efficient. Vampire counts. Vargeist got charge bonus and melee damage. That's great. I don't know if that's going to be enough to really make them great, but I've seen some people making them work in their old design. So, I mean, those aren't insignificant buffs, so we'll see. Karen Race, +2 melee attack. Awesome. I will take every buff they give ethereal units because ethereal units should be really, really strong considering almost every army can one-shot them. Zombies in the Tithe, 50 cheaper. That's great. It just encourages you to take zombies as a basic unit. And then the Vargulf got +20 damn AP and +10 base. This one is kind of a weird one. The Vargulf, in my opinion, was already very, very good. Like, super good. So I don't know how I feel about it getting a lot better, because that is a significant amount of AP damage increase. So I feel like that might be a mistake, buffing the Vargulf. Like, I feel like if you reverse these, that would be more fair. But well, I guess we'll see, because I mean, I've fought Vampire Count players who will take some melee lord or even Kemmler, and then they'll take 2 Vargulfs, and it's very difficult not to get curb stomped by the Vargulfs. Anyway, Tomb Kings. Hydro Titan got +4 melee attack. Great. Hopefully that might make him more viable, because he used to be viable as kind of like a character nuker, but his melee stats weren't that great, and then they reduced his ability to nuke people, and he just kind of didn't have a place. So hopefully that will help him out a bit. All skeleton chariots, regular ones, got cheaper, which is great, because Tomb King should be able to run mass chariot armies if they want, just like they did in tabletop. But they also got +6 charge bonus on both versions. That's awesome. Kotep on the Casket of Souls and the Hekaran Warriors are all cheaper. Awesome. Carrion are more expensive. That's good. They are a very, very, very good unit for just blocking people. Sepulchral Stalkers got an additional +3 bonus versus large. That's pretty good and might help them as kind of being guardians for like your back line. I still think their shooting attack needs to be significantly better, because like their shooting attack, in my opinion, should maybe not do a ton of damage, but it should be like pure AP damage, so it just melts units like Chaos Warriors or Great Swords or things of that nature. But right now, it feels like it's not really good against anything, and they have such little ammo, they run out after like 2 or 3 volleys, which they go through very quickly. So Don't know if that's enough to really make them great yet. Casket of Souls got a damage buff. Awesome. It desperately needs it considering how hard it is to hit anything. And the Bone Giant got a very significant damage buff to his arrow attack, which is awesome. Just makes him more viable because he's kind of a meme pick right now. So that's welcome. Treekin. So we actually talked about these guys a lot at the Everchosen. Treekin are actually super good now. -2 charge and -3 melee defense to compensate for it. But that +5 melee attack is actually very significant. That's like I think based on their ult, I think they went from 20 to 25 melee attack. So that it's like percentage-wise, that's a huge increase. And actually helps them in a ton of matchups. So good for them. All basic Glade Riders, just the basic Glade Riders are 25 cheaper, and just the basic Glade Guard are 50 cheaper. That's awesome to encourage people to take more of the basic archers. And then Hagbane tips on both units, which are the poisoned ones, got -3 base damage, but +3 AP damage, and they deal magic damage now. That's awesome. It kind of bothered, because we used to, I don't know if y'all remember, but it used to be that all of the Wood Elf, like, extra arrows did magic damage, and then they went to none of them. I'm glad they have now settled on some of them. So, I am totally cool seeing Hagbane tips do magic damage, just because it gives you the ability to take magic damage dealing archers, which is unique to the Wood Elves, and it should be. Like, I mean, High Elves can do that, but they have to take a super expensive Sisters of Avalorn unit to do it. But the fact that Hagbane tips do poison and more AP now, and do magic damage, just makes them so much better in so many more matchups. Wardens of Sithra more expensive. That's a little bit of a weird one. Not sure if they were, like, overperforming. I don't even remember the last time I saw them on the battlefield, but, you know, hey, whatever. Way Watchers take 1 second longer to reload. Good. Way Watchers are brutally effective, so I'm glad to see that they're going to shoot a little slower. Primal Instincts, we already talked about this. Horned Ones, Cold One Spear Riders, and Cold One Riders got their stats debuffed to make way for the new Primal Instincts. Krokgar on foot finally has charge defense against large, and he got plus a little bit more health to make him more viable as that build, because I didn't even realize he didn't have charge defense against large, which is a little unfair considering that pretty much every single character in the game with some kind of spear or halberd does. So I'm glad that's there now. And then he on foot or on his non-Carnosaur mount got an additional +8 bonus versus large. That's awesome. Just makes him better at dealing with those things. Then the all characters on Pterodons now do more damage with their drop rock, which makes total sense because they drop a single rock, and the old one used to be so useless most people didn't use it. And they also increase the mass for the Pterodon, which is great because that means it can like swoop down and hit something and then get the heck out of dodge, or you can even use it to block more types of units now. Pegasus Knights and Royal got charge bonus. Neat. I don't know if that's going to make a massive difference, but it helps them get closer to being good. Polearms are 25 cheaper and got +1 bonus versus large. That's a nice change. Beastlayers of Baston got +5 bonus versus large, which is awesome. And Champions of Quinel's got -100 cost. That was already a pretty decent unit, so that's great. Skaven Assassin, we already talked about this, and oh, this is really, really cool multiplayer-wise. So the Assassin used to have Queek's Trophy Head ability for some stupid reason, which is unique to Queek in campaign. Like, only Queek can get trophy heads. So now the Assassins work like they do in campaign, where they instead get Assassin's Trophy instead of trophy heads. But the cool thing about that is you can combine those two debuffs. So you can hit, like, if Kolak Suneater, as a bad example, but if Kolak Suneater comes rampaging towards you with, or you know who's a better, okay, Noctilus, much better example, you're like fighting him with Queek Head Taker, and you have an assassin, you can drop both abilities on him to basically just nuke his stat line down to like 0 melee attack, 0 melee defense, which is great, because then you can just murder them. Summon Plague Monks now have corrected health, great. Warriors of Chaos, Sigvald, +5 melee attack, that's cool. Still don't think it's going to make them very good, but cool. Forsaken and Demon Spew got +2 charge, makes them a little more efficient when they're in that initial front charge engagement. Marauder Horsemasters, both for Norska, now have the same melee weapons as the Chaos ones, which I didn't even know they were different. And then they both got +2 ammo, and the regular Horsemen with Javelins got -2 ammo. That's really, really cool in my opinion, because it used to be that the difference between the Marauder Horsemen and the Horsemasters was just that the Horsemasters had better melee stats, essentially, which nobody wanted to pay for that. Like, everyone was like, oh, I'll just take the regular ones because they have the most ammo, and so I'll get the most efficient use out of them as just running around and just throwing crap at people for the leadership debuff and just straight damage. I don't know if this makes the Horsemasters have more ammo than the Javelins, but giving them less and giving them more makes that exchange of being like, well, maybe I will, you know, put out the money to get the more expensive unit variant. Really good change. Chaos Spawn, Weird Spawn, +2 melee attack. That's awesome. They aren't bad units. So the fact that they got a little buff is great. And then Swords of Chaos got -100 multiplayer cost. I don't know if that's going to make them viable just because there's so few of them. And they can still get one-shot by certain kinds of things like, you know, certain spells or cannons and stuff can still do a ton of damage to them. And their buff is difficult to use. They're like army-wide buff. So I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to make them viable, but who knows? Maybe someone will make it work. And then all giants in the game got +3 run speed, which is awesome. I think giants may still need to be a little faster, but their movement speed compared to their size was bizarre. Like, even for how slow they moved, they literally took like baby steps towards the enemy, and they would just get shot down. So I'm glad that they're a little faster. War Mammoth on the War Shrine is 100 cheaper, but the Pharaoh Mammoth 100 more. That's awesome. That just kind of narrows the gap between like the efficiency of the different mammoths. Because right now, or in the current live patch, you would only see people bring Pharaoh Mammoths and never any other mammoth. Because they're like, I just can't justify the price difference compared to the stat difference, you know? So I think that's a really nice fair trade. And then Armored Skin Wolves and the Miles of Savagery are 50 cheaper. Cool. Basic Minotaurs got +2 melee attack. I still don't think that's enough to make Minotaurs viable. I think a lot of people have been burned by the fact that they get slapped around so easily. So I don't think that's going to be enough to fix that. And then, the Chaos Spawn for the Beastmen also got +2 melee attack. That's awesome, because Beastmen Chaos Spawn are super good because they have poison. I'm not going to really go super into depth on the ability changes, other than we talked about the Beloved Son of Bretonia and High King no longer have the 50% above morale thing. That's great. All of these are basically the same. They just made the spells, they're trying to even out, it looks like, the projectile spells to be more fair based to their cost, and also making Vindictive Glare and Shim's Burning Gaze less good at nuking characters. And then Warp Shard armor, now, which is Queek's armor, now gives -5 melee defense in addition to everything else it does, which is really strong. That actually could make Queek viable. And then Dwarf Gouger, on top of giving Queek, like, I think +40% AP, and maybe something else, gives an additional +26 melee attack, but the duration is reduced a little bit, but that's still great. Essentially, it seems like they're trying really hard between the assassin change and the item changes to make Queek Headtaker like a really, really good character murderer. So like someone that you run with your army and he gets up to the enemy lord or hero or wizard or even monster, and he just like, you pop his buffs and he just like flattens them. Revenge Incarnate, we talked about that earlier. Slaughterer's Call, this is Azhag's ability. It's his, like, I think it's his leadership buff, or like a passive he has, but it now buffs melee attack by 9. It used to do it less than that, I believe, so that's a great buff to make him a little bit better of a general. Van Horseman Speculum, this is not in multiplayer to my knowledge. I think this is only in single player. Maybe. I swear this is somewhere in single player, but I haven't been able to find it. Maybe I should look harder. But Star of Avalorn heals 10% less health per second. That's a much needed debuff because that thing was OP as hell. Dreaded 13th spell. The detonation does more damage. You can actually aim it now, which is great. And the detonation speed is different. I don't know if it's faster or less fast, but that's awesome. And then here they go over the details of the drop rock buff, which is awesome. And then general bug fixes, not going to worry too much about the bug fixes. Like, those you can read over, they're very straightforward, shouldn't blow your mind. Unless there's like one that you particularly hate. And, alright, that's going to do it for this patch. The trait Hates Vampire Ghost now has effects. Well, that's good. So thank you all for joining me. We're about to hit 45 minutes, but I just wanted to make a video about this to just kind of give my thoughts on it, because a lot of people have been asking me about it, and there's even more videos I gotta do tomorrow. Like, I know everyone wants to talk about, like, what Grace said about no more race packs and just a bunch of other crap. So we will discuss that later this week. CA, tell you what, CA really just kind of dumped like everything on us content creators in like 2 days time. So yeah. In any event, thank you all so much for watching. I will be back with a 10-1 campaign. I'll be restarting that campaign here in just a little bit, probably to go along with launch, and yada yada yada. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye. Love you guys.